fading sun dipped behind a range of mountains, casting a golden hue over the small village of Phuc. The evening wind rustled through tall bamboo groves, whispering ancient secrets that had long clung to this land. At the edge of the village, a newly built pagoda gleamed in the twilight. It stood tall and serene, a symbol of hope and harmony, lovingly rebuilt after decades of neglect. Inside, the elderly monk Master Vinbao sat quietly on a stone bench beneath a Bodhi tree, sipping hot tea, his eyes filled with satisfaction. His life had been devoted to this village. He had lived long enough to see it rise from poverty to prosperity, to watch children he once taught now return as adults, many with success stories to share. Yet nothing gave him more joy than seeing this sacred pagoda, once a ruin, now reborn with grace and strength. A sudden voice broke the stillness. "Master." "Excuse me, Master." Vinbao turned. At the wooden gate stood a lean young man with sun-darkened skin and tired eyes. He carried a modest travel bag and a hesitant smile. The monk blinked, his memory clicking into place slowly. The young man bowed. "It's me. Qian, son of Uncle Duong and Aunt Mai. I used to play in the temple yard when I was little." Master Vinbao's eyes lit up. "Bless my eyes. Little Qian. You were just a scrawny boy the last time I saw you. That must have been 10 years ago, hasn't it?" Qian chuckled, stepping closer. His voice was rougher than Vinbao remembered. "Yes, Master. Time flew by. I've just come back home." Vinbao embraced the young man like an old friend. Come in, come in. You must be tired from the journey. The pagoda has changed a lot, hasn't it?" As they walked through the front courtyard, Qian's eyes wandered across the intricate carvings, the polished bronze bell hanging in the main hall, the statues of deities standing proudly under the newly painted ceiling. But something else shimmered in his gaze, not reverence, not nostalgia but calculation. "It's beautiful," Qian murmured, though not to himself. "Yes," the monk replied. "We owe much to Mr. Bao Tian. He's done well in business and funded over half of the restoration." Qian's eyes narrowed subtly. Bao Tian. That name again. They sat down under a lantern-lit alcove. Master Vinbao poured more tea. "Tell me, how has life treated you out there?" Qian looked down. "Ups and downs, Master. I've learned a lot, but it's been rough." The monk nodded. "Even suffering can be a great teacher." Qian forced a smile, then asked, "May I look around inside the pagoda?" "Just to feel the old spirit again." "Of course, my child," the monk replied gently. Qian walked through the halls, touching statues with faint reverence. But his mind wasn't on prayer. Every artifact, every bell, every antique relic, it was a number. A price tag. and he knew exactly who wanted those numbers. Later, under the footbridge by the lotus pond, Qian dialed a number on his old, scratched phone. It took 4 tries before someone picked up. "Did you get inside?" The voice growled on the other end. "I saw enough," Qian answered. "There are bronze statues, a massive ceremonial bell. All real. And expensive." A laugh echoed back. "I knew it. You see, kid. This is your chance. Pull this off, and not only is your debt gone, I'll give you a bonus. Enough to start a whole new life." Qian hesitated. "But, it's a temple." "Oh, please," the voice snarled. "Don't go soft on me. Temples get robbed all the time. No one dies. It's just metal and stone. They'll build new ones. You owe me, and this is your way out." Qian closed his eyes. The pond rippled in silence. "I'll do it," he said at last. Returning home, Qian passed through narrow village alleys. Modern houses lined the road's glass windows, red-tiled roofs, electric gates. His own family's house stood in stark contrast, its clay walls cracked, its wooden door barely hanging on. Years of absence had aged it more than expected. Weeds grew wild at the front. A dog barked in the distance. He pushed the creaking gate and stepped in. Inside, his parents sat at a humble table, bowls of boiled vegetables and fish. His father, Uncle Duong, looked up and smiled faintly. "You're home, son." Qian lowered his bag, unsure how to respond. Shame burned through his chest. "Sit down and eat," said his mother gently. He did. The food was bland, but he chewed every bite like it was gold. "You've been gone so long," Uncle Duong said softly. "No matter where you go, this is always your home." Qian nodded without meeting their eyes. That night, as rain pattered against the roof, Qian stared at the ceiling. His phone buzzed again. "Tomorrow," the voice said. "Go back. Take pictures of every statue, every relic, every detail. We need to prepare the replicas. The rest will be handled on delivery day." The call ended. Qian sat in the dark, fingers trembling. Was this truly the way out? The following morning, the mist had not yet lifted from the mountain ridges when Qian stepped out, wearing a crisp white shirt and polished shoes. His hair, once wild and unkempt, was now neatly combed. In his backpack lay a phone with a fresh memory card, a notebook, and a pen. He had come prepared. As he approached the Phuc pagoda, the golden roof tiles shimmered against the soft light. From a distance, the scene looked holy, tranquil, a place untouched by human greed. But Qian's heartbeat echoed a different rhythm. Inside, Master Vien Bao was sweeping dry leaves from the stone courtyard. Qian, you're up early, the monk said kindly. So good to see youthful diligence. What brings you back again so soon? Qian smiled, faking innocence with terrifying ease. I couldn't stop thinking about what you said yesterday. About peace. About giving back. I've made up my mind I want to donate a statue to the pagoda. Something beautiful, meaningful. I'm not rich like Mr. Tian, but I want to contribute, from my heart. The old monk's eyes gleamed with warmth. That's a noble thought, my child. But remember, charity must not exceed one's capacity. Even a flower, if offered with sincerity, is as precious as gold. Qian bowed his head. Thank you, Master. But I'd still like to look around, to take some photos. I want to send them to a craftsman I know in Da Nang. He's very experienced. Perhaps he can advise me on design and scale. Bean Bao nodded and waved toward the prayer hall. Feel free. Just be respectful. These halls are watched by more than eyes. Qian stepped into the main shrine. As he raised his phone, the lens caught the soft flicker of candles, the stillness of the statues, the old wood that creaked like it was breathing. The camera shutter clicked once. Then again. And again. The statues stared back. Each deity stood frozen in serene posture, Amitabha in the center, arms folded, Kuan Yin, draped in flowing robes, and to the sides, the fierce four heavenly kings, swords and spears in hand, eyes painted to pierce through souls. Qian zoomed in frame by frame, capturing the fine engravings, the faded prayers etched behind their feet, the rust marks on the bell. He noted everything. Even the shadows. Then something odd happened. As he pointed the lens toward the bronze bell, the phone glitched. The screen flickered. A brief static image appeared, an eye. Just an eye. Watching him. He shook the phone. The screen returned to normal. Just my nerves, he muttered. Maybe I need more sleep. But as he turned around, one of the statues just for a second seemed to have moved. Its hand, once pointing downward, now pointed at him. Qian froze. But when he looked again, the hand was back to its original pose. No, no, you're just imagining things. He quickly finished taking the remaining shots and left the prayer hall. Outside, Master Bean Bao was seated on a wooden stool, sipping tea. Done already? The monk asked. Yes, Qian said, slipping the phone into his pocket. Thank you, Master. I'll send the designs to the craftsman today. Bean Bao smiled. The gods hear everything, even silent intentions. May yours remain pure. Qian forced a nod, then turned and walked away, his back straight, his eyes dark. Later that evening, Kien sat beneath the old banyan tree behind his house. He called the same number. "It's done. I got everything, angles, sizes, placement, details down to the grain. Even the damn inscriptions." "Excellent," the voice growled. "That's what I like to hear. We've already commissioned a set of near-perfect replicas. You'll deliver the photos to the craftsman's middleman tonight at the old petrol station outside town. Got it?" "Yes," Kien replied. "And after that?" There was a pause. "Then you wait. On the day of delivery, there will be distractions. While everyone's looking one way, we'll swap the statues. No one will notice until it's too late. You just keep your mask on and play the part of the devoted son of the village. Soon, your debt disappears. And a new life begins." As the call ended, Kien looked up at the stars, his expression empty. But deep within, a part of him stirred a small voice, almost forgotten. He remembered his grandmother's voice warning him as a child. "Never lie in front of Buddha. The gods forgive slowly, if ever." He shook it off. He was no longer that naive boy. That night, something strange happened again. As Kien lay in bed, the wind began to howl. His bedroom door creaked open, by itself. The temperature dropped. He turned his head, and on the wall, in the mirror, a faint figure stood behind him. A monk, shadowy and headless, holding a cracked lotus bowl. Kien gasped, leapt from the bed, and turned on the light. The figure was gone. Breathing hard, he stood alone in his room, the walls suddenly feeling too tight. The mirror reflected nothing unusual. He checked his phone. 3:33 a.m. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. The sun rose late that day. Clouds covered the village of Phuc like a veil of secrecy. A pale light filtered through the mist, giving the entire valley a haunted hue. Kien stood at the edge of a lonely road, clutching a brown envelope filled with memory cards and notes. He checked his watch, 6:17 a.m. A black motorbike approached from afar. No license plate. The rider wore a helmet with a cracked visor. No greetings. No small talk. The rider nodded toward the envelope. Kien handed it over. The man took one long look at Kien, almost a judgmental glance, then turned and disappeared into the morning fog, wheels humming like a whisper through the mist. Kien stood there for a moment, wondering why he felt watched. Back at the village, Master Veenbao sat cross-legged before the altar. He had sensed something unusual. The air within the temple halls had grown heavy. He had woken from a dream of statues crying blood, of the great bell shattering with a soundless scream. He reached out to adjust the incense burner and it burned his hand. Startled, he inspected it. It wasn't even hot. but the scent of the incense had turned bitter, almost metallic. He stood and walked to the main hall. The statues stood as always, but now, he noticed something subtle. A crack on the left ankle of Vice Ravana, one of the four heavenly kings. That crack wasn't there yesterday. Or was it? Vinbao whispered a prayer under his breath and remained still. Outside, the wind had stopped. Everything was too still. Meanwhile, Qian was back home, changing into a sharp set of clothes he had bought just the day before. The fabric still smelled of plastic and showroom polish. His parents, especially Uncle Duong, stared at him with wary eyes. "You've changed," the old man said, barely hiding his unease. Qian flashed a smile. "In a good way, I hope." Duong didn't answer. Instead, he folded his hands. "Son, sometimes the path that shines brightest leads to the darkest end." Qian's smile faltered, but he quickly recovered. "I'm doing this for us. For you and Mom. For a better life." He took out a wad of cash and placed it gently in front of them. "For the medicine. The roof. Everything you've needed." His mother wept silently. Duong didn't touch the money. 2 days later, the ceremony was announced. A grand ritual to bless the arrival of the new statues. Qian, of course, would be the honored donor. The village elders were delighted. The news spread quickly. Young Qian, once mocked for his failures, now revered as a righteous man of wealth and virtue. Qian walked through the market that day, and heads turned. Children waved at him. Aunties offered him sweet buns and lotus tea. Even old men nodded respectfully. But he felt none of it. His hands were sweating. Inside his mind, he kept hearing a sound. Dong, dong, dong. Like the bell in the pagoda, echoing slowly inside his skull. Each strike louder than the last. That night, the dream returned. He stood inside the pagoda alone. But this time, it was burning. The statues were melting, crying golden tears. The bell dropped from the ceiling, shattering in front of him. And from behind him, 1,000 voices screamed in agony, overlapping like waves in a storm. He turned in the dream and saw himself. Another Qian. Identical. But with black eyes, skin cracked like old porcelain, and a mouth that whispered. "You stole from gods. Now pay the price." Qian jolted awake, soaked in sweat. The clock read 2:22 a.m. He dared not sleep again. The next morning, the trucks arrived. 3 large lorries disguised as delivery for construction. Covered in tarp. But inside replica statues, forged perfectly down to the finest imperfection. Qian stood by the pagoda gates, directing people with a confident voice, a mask of strength. but his heart beat like a war drum. The real statues, one by one, were moved into the trucks behind everyone's back, under the pretense of blessing preparation. Meanwhile, the replicas were placed carefully into their exact spots. No one suspected a thing. Master Veen Bao, unaware, watched with pride. Young Qian, your heart is noble. The gods will bless you eternally. Qian's smile cracked. If only the gods were that merciful. As the sun dipped below the mountains, the ritual began. Chants filled the courtyard. Incense spiraled into the sky. The village knelt together, unaware they were praying to false idols. In the middle of it all, Qian felt a sudden chill. He turned and saw a boy no older than 7 staring at him from the edge of the crowd. The boy wasn't chanting. Just staring. His eyes were glowing faintly red. When Qian blinked, the boy was gone. Later that night, back in his room, Qian locked the doors and windows. But the moment he turned off the lights, dong! The sound of the pagoda's great bell echoed once more, except it wasn't ringing tonight. Dong! He opened his eyes. His mirror fogged up with no explanation. And there it was again. The eye. That same eye from his phone screen, staring at him. But this time, it was inside the mirror, staring back with a flame burning in its iris. The next morning in Phuc village was anything but ordinary. People awoke still speaking of last night's grand ceremony. Neighbors praised Qian endlessly. Children mimicked the bowing ritual in play. Auntie Lan even spread the rumor that a faint golden glow was seen surrounding the new statues during the final blessing, a divine sign, she said. But Qian couldn't enjoy any of it. He hadn't slept. Not a second. He sat at the edge of his bed, the image from last night's mirror burned into his skull. That flaming iris, the same eye he'd seen when photographing the altar days ago, was now appearing more often. And it wasn't just in reflections anymore. Sometimes, even shadows moved when he passed by. Later that afternoon, a battered delivery truck covered in dirt and smelling of burnt incense pulled up at the village outskirts. Inside sat Bao Khan, the lead craftsman of the replicated statues, sent by the same benefactor who ran the operation. He was sweating, muttering prayers under his breath. The night before, his entire warehouse where the fake statues were cast had been overrun by a fire. No lightning. No wiring issues. No explanation. But what made it worse? The fire didn't burn the warehouse. It only melted the molds of the Buddha statues. And in their place, written across the ground in black soot, were 5 words. The gods see all thieves. When Bao Khan tried to photograph it, his phone shattered in his hand, glass exploding as if struck by thunder. He had come to Phuc to deliver paperwork and quietly asked to back out. But when he saw Qian standing at the gate, dressed sharply, surrounded by elders offering gifts and praise, he couldn't speak. The fear choked his throat. He left in silence, tossing the paperwork on a bench, whispering to himself. This will be my last job. Meanwhile, deep inside the pagoda, Master Beanbao lit incense as he did every evening. Yet tonight, the air hung thicker, heavier. It smelled not of jasmine and sandalwood but of wet stone and metal. He bowed to the new statues. But as he rose, he noticed it again. That crack on the ankle of Vice Ravana larger now. More visible. Almost like a wound. And worse, he noticed a fine layer of dust on the shoulder of one statue. These had just arrived. They were supposed to be new. But this dust. It smelled like charcoal. He reached out to brush it off when the incense behind him exploded, scattering ash like black rain. Startled, he stumbled backwards. His robe caught fire briefly. He patted it out with trembling hands. He looked up at the four heavenly kings again. They hadn't moved. But their eyes, they no longer looked serene. They looked furious. That night, in the house of Mr. Fan, one of the workers hired to help move the statues during the ceremony, strange things began happening. It began with a constant sound of knocking from inside his walls. Then his dog, a loyal mutt who had never left his side for 6 years, refused to enter the house. It stood outside, barking and growling at an unseen force beyond the doorway. Then, just after midnight, Fan heard footsteps, barefoot, pacing across his ceiling. When he grabbed a flashlight and climbed up to inspect, there was nothing but old tiles. But written across them in fresh dust, smeared by fingers, were words. Return what isn't yours. The following day, Qian returned to the pagoda for an inspection. Everything was still perfect to the villagers. The bell hung proudly. The statues gleamed. But Qian's vision had changed. Now, every smile on those sacred faces looked like a mockery. Even worse, he started hearing things. As he walked past the statue of Guan Yin, a soft, unmistakable whisper tickled his ear. Thief. He spun around. No one was there. Master Beanbao greeted him minutes later, commenting that he looked pale. Sleep issues, Qian said. The monk stared at him deeply, long and quiet. Then he said softly, "There's something wrong with this temple." Qian laughed it off. "Maybe you're just tired, master." But the monk didn't smile. "I've lived here for 40 years, he said. Never has the temple been this silent. Not even the birds land on the roof anymore." At home that night, Qian drank heavily. He turned up loud music. He took sleeping pills. And still he couldn't sleep. Because now, it wasn't just whispers. Now, the statues came in his dreams. He'd find himself locked in the pagoda, the bell echoing with every heartbeat. The statues would turn their heads slowly to face him. they would move 1 foot at a time, closing in. The candlelight would flicker and die. And then, a voice. Not loud, but inside his mind. The price has been set. The debt, paid in soul. He woke up screaming, covered in sweat, and blood on his palm from clenching his fist too tightly. The next morning, the entire village was shaken. Mr. Phan had been found dead, collapsed on his porch. His eyes were open, his hands clasped together like in prayer, and on his forehead, a red imprint in the shape of a statue's footprint. The villagers called it a stroke. Only Kien knew better. He didn't attend the funeral. He simply walked into the woods behind his house, knelt before a decaying tree, and began digging with his bare hands, burying something. A copy of the temple blueprint. A broken phone. A piece of melted bronze. But he didn't bury his guilt. That followed him everywhere. It was the 5th night since the statues were swapped, and the village of Phuc was no longer the same. The change was subtle, so subtle that only a few noticed. A sudden sickness swept through 3 households near the pagoda. Chickens died without wounds. Infants cried through the night without cause. And worst of all, the water in the communal well turned muddy and metallic, leaving behind the smell of burned incense and ash. The elders dismissed it as coincidence. Only Master Veen Bao sat in meditation, hands shaking, whispering mantras with dry lips. He knew the signs. He had read of them before in scrolls locked deep in the temple archive. Warnings. Legends. When the statues bleed dust and the bell echoes without being struck, the divine shall awaken not to forgive, but to punish. Kien had locked himself in his room. His skin was pale now. Eyes bloodshot. Lips cracked. He hadn't eaten for over a day. He'd tried to ignore the visions, tried drowning them in alcohol and noise. But nothing worked. Now, even in the broad daylight, he was no longer safe. That morning, while brushing his teeth, he saw something in the mirror. Not his own reflection, but that of a man on fire, his mouth open in a silent scream, staring back at him from inside the mirror. When he turned around, no one. Later, in the street, a woman carrying vegetables suddenly dropped her basket, looked at Kien, and screamed, "Your face, it's not yours." Everyone rushed to her aid. Kien fled. He ran to the edge of the village, where the forest thickened. He collapsed beneath a mossy tree and screamed into the earth. "What do you want from me? I gave you everything. I gave them back their temple. I gave them statues. A voice interrupted him. Not a human voice, but a low rumble from beneath the soil itself. "You gave nothing. You stole. And now, you return to dust." Kien clawed the earth beneath him, trying to find where the voice came from. but all he pulled up was ash. Ash that smelled like incense. The next day, the village awoke to blood. A young boy named Min, barely 10, was found in the temple courtyard. His body was untouched, but his eyes were missing. In their place, something had placed 2 small stones with inscriptions etched in an ancient script. On his chest, in ashes, was drawn the seal of the heavenly kings. The police were called. Investigations began. But Master Veen Bao knew, this wasn't the work of man. Kien stayed hidden for 2 days. He didn't return home. He didn't eat. His only companion was the whisper, the one that echoed inside his ears no matter where he was. Return the sacred, or we take your soul. By now, even his hands trembled involuntarily. He couldn't hold a spoon. Couldn't light a cigarette. Couldn't even sleep without the sensation of cold fingers wrapping around his throat. He tried to contact his old benefactor, the voice on the phone, the man who'd promised him freedom. But the number was no longer in service. Desperate, Kien decided to visit the pagoda alone at midnight. He carried with him a single candle, his breathing erratic, his shirt soaked in sweat. The village was asleep. The moon was hidden. Only the occasional sound of an owl or a cracking branch echoed through the silence. When he entered the pagoda, it felt alive. The air was heavy. The walls were breathing. The statues were no longer still. He swore he saw the hand of Guan Yin twitch as he passed by. The bell swung once, ever so slightly, but no wind blew. He knelt in front of the main altar. Please, please take it back. I didn't mean to offend. I only wanted to help. I didn't mean for anyone to die. No reply. Just silence. Until he heard footsteps, bare feet on stone, approaching from behind. He turned around swiftly. Nothing. But when he turned back toward the altar, the statues were gone. The entire shrine was empty. Just the candle, and the shadow of his own figure on the wall, except, the shadow had horns. He ran. Out the temple gates. Through the village. To his childhood home. He banged on the door. Mom. Dad. Open up. His mother opened the door slowly. And gasped. Who are you? Kien stepped back. It's me. It's your son. She screamed and slammed the door. Kien looked at his reflection in the window. His face was no longer his. It was a melted, twisted mask, like one of the statues that had been exposed to flame and fury. He wandered for hours. Through the fields. Through the marshes. Until he reached the edge of the river shrine, a tiny temple built decades ago, long since abandoned. He crawled inside. Collapsed before a broken statue of Buddha. He didn't speak. He just wept. Tears fell not just from grief but from fear. Fear that even the gods would not hear him now. Behind him, the wind carried a single, chilling phrase. You had a choice. Now we have yours. At sunrise, his body was found. Kien lay at the river's edge, his body intact, his eyes open, but his mouth filled with ashes. His phone, still in his pocket, showed one final photo taken at midnight, though he swore he hadn't taken any pictures. It was a photo of the temple altar. And standing behind it, half in shadow, was a statue with Kien's face. 2 days had passed since Kien's lifeless body was found by the riverbank. The news spread like wildfire, but the truth was twisted by whispers and rumors. The villagers said it was suicide. Others claimed it was guilt. Only a few old souls with trembling hands dared to speak the word. Retribution. But none of them said it out loud. Not near the pagoda. Not anymore. In a sleek black car, parked far outside the village, the man behind the statue heist leaned back in his leather seat, sipping fine whiskey. His gold rings clinked against the glass. Around him were two of his loyal enforcers, both dressed in designer clothes, pretending they weren't nervous. Man smirked. Kien went soft. He got caught in his own guilt. That's all. He waved a hand dismissively. One pawn lost. The rest of the board still stands. But then the driver approached, whispering something into his ear. Mana's brow furrowed. What do you mean the buyer won't pick up the goods? The driver stepped back. They said the statues changed. Man slammed his glass down. He wasn't a superstitious man. He didn't believe in divine justice. To him, temples were full of expensive rocks and easy prey. But that night, something happened he couldn't explain. At 2:41 a.m., in the private storage unit where the real statues were hidden, a security alarm went off. When his men arrived, the steel doors were still locked. But inside, the statues were gone. Instead, lying on the floor, were themselves his men. 3 of them. Dead. Eyes open. No wounds. But their tongues were missing. On the concrete wall behind them, written in dried blood, were 3 characters. Tra-la. Return it. Mana's composure cracked. He called a priest, an expensive one from Saigon who specialized in exorcisms and spiritual cleansing. But when the priest arrived, he took one step inside the warehouse and vomited. He left immediately, whispering only one thing. There are no gods here. Only wrath. Paranoia began to consume man. He started sleeping with lights on. Burned incense non-stop in his home. Avoided mirrors. and most importantly he avoided sleep. But the nightmares found him anyway. One night, he dreamed of a temple corridor that went on forever. He walked for hours, but the statues never ended. Each one had his face twisted, burned, screaming. When he woke up, his walls were covered in ash fingerprints, claw marks trailing across the windows like something had tried to crawl in. Then came the voices. Soft at first, barely whispers. But each time he heard them, they grew bolder, louder, more angry. You fed greed with sacred blood. You burned prayers for gold. You will not be forgiven. Man lost control. He shot his own mirror in a panic one night, claiming it blinked first. He ordered the remaining statues destroyed. But every time he tried to burn one, the fire refused to catch. Worse, each statue's eyes would blacken, and from their mouths, a dark soot would ooze out, spelling his name. Man. That was the last straw. He told his men, "We're going back to Phuc. We're burying every damn thing. Wipe it from the earth." But on the drive there, they never made it. The car, going at over 90 kilometers per hour, spun off the mountain road with no skid marks. Locals claimed there was no rain, no wind. Only a loud thunderclap, followed by the sound of a bell ringing from nowhere. The next morning, police found the car in a ravine. Mana's body was still inside. His hands were fused together, locked in a prayer position. His mouth was stuffed with coins. Each coin bore a carved image of Vice Ravana, one of the heavenly kings. Back in Phuc, Master Vinbao was preparing the temple for purification. He had felt the shift. The curse had ended for now. But something had changed in him. He now slept beside the altar. He stopped allowing anyone to photograph inside the pagoda. And he had begun restoring an old mural behind the altar wall, a mural that depicted the cycle of karma. At the center of that mural, newly uncovered, was an empty figure, a man with no face, surrounded by flames and gold. Beneath the figure, ancient faded words. The one who steals from gods, shall feed the gods. The villagers eventually forgot. Time eroded the horror into rumor. The bell was repaired. The cracked statue was sealed. And when strangers asked why no one was allowed to donate statues anymore, the elders simply answered, "Because once, someone did." And the gods never forgot. Years passed. The village of Phuc seemed to have returned to peaceful normalcy. The pagoda stood tall, its statues gleaming in the sunlight, its bell ringing with a clear tone every morning. The villagers went about their lives, children played near the lotus pond, and the old monk, Master Vinbao, still tended to the sacred halls. But beneath this serene surface, the past was far from buried. Among the new generation was Lan, a bright-eyed teenager with an insatiable curiosity and a heart tethered deeply to the village. She was the granddaughter of Uncle Duong and Aunt Mai, the same family that once nurtured Qian. From her earliest days, she felt the weight of something unseen, a secret whispered in the rustling bamboo leaves and the flickering shadows of dusk. Lan loved exploring the pagoda, often sneaking in when no one was watching. The monks tolerated her presence, seeing in her a rare devotion, but also worried about her restless spirit. One afternoon, as the golden sun cast long shadows, Lan stumbled upon a small, forgotten chamber behind the altar. It was sealed by ancient wooden doors, covered in dust and spider webs. On the door was carved a single symbol, a circle enclosing 4 intertwined flames. Her fingers trembled as she pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with incense smoke and the faint glow of faded frescoes depicting celestial battles between gods and mortals. At the center lay a pedestal, but it was empty. Ian's heart quickened. Suddenly, a chill ran down her spine as she heard a faint echo. A voice, barely a whisper. "Return what was taken, or the cycle will never end." Back in the village, Master Veen Bao felt a disturbance. His meditation was shattered by visions of fire and shadow, of a faceless man locked in flames. He knew the curse was awakening once again, and it had found new soil to take root. He sought out Ian's family, warning them quietly. "Your granddaughter has touched what should remain untouched," he said gravely. "The past is not dead. It waits." That night, Lan could not sleep. Her dreams were haunted by the flaming man she had seen in the mural, his eyes black as voids, his mouth opening wide in a silent scream. He reached for her, and she felt his cold fingers brush against her skin. Awakening in a sweat, she found a small, charred coin on her bedside table. The same coins that had been found with Man, the gang leader. Her fingers shook as she picked it up. Meanwhile, in the shadows, the few remaining associates of Man and Qian convened. They were a broken circle, guilt-ridden, terrified, and hunted by forces they barely understood. One among them, Bao Kuang, a former enforcer and now a recluse, had begun digging into the old temple records. He uncovered forgotten texts describing the Heavenly King's Seal, a mystical force protecting sacred sites from defilement, punishing thieves with wrath beyond mortal understanding. Bao Kuang realized that the statues stolen were not mere idols, but vessels of divine power. Removing them disturbed the cosmic balance. He decided to return to Phuc. As Ian's visions intensified, she sought out Bao Kuang after hearing rumors of a man researching the temple's past. Their meeting was tense but purposeful. Bao Kuang warned her, "The curse is real. It moves like smoke, unseen but deadly." The statues were the last anchor. Without them, the spirits are restless, hungry. Lan listened carefully. She felt the heavy weight of responsibility fall on her young shoulders. "I want to help," she said firmly. Together, they ventured back to the pagoda. They performed rituals of cleansing, invoking prayers from long-forgotten scriptures. Yet the air grew heavier, the shadows darker. One night, during a fierce thunderstorm, the pagoda bell tolled by itself. Lightning split the sky, illuminating ghostly figures encircling the temple grounds. Lan saw them, faces of the cursed, trapped between worlds. She recognized Qian's face among them, twisted in torment, reaching out with silent pleas. The villagers grew fearful. Strange phenomena increased. Crops failed. The well ran dry. An eerie silence replaced the once cheerful morning bell. Master Vien Bao grew frilier but remained steadfast. He revealed to Lan the final truth: the statues were more than vessels. They were keys. Keys to binding the wrathful spirits and restoring balance. To break the curse, the statues must be found and returned, no matter the cost. But the journey to retrieve them would not be easy. Each statue had been scattered, some sold, others lost, and many destroyed. Lan and Bao Kuang vowed to find each one. Guided by ancient maps, cryptic symbols, and whispers in dreams, they prepared to enter the unknown. And somewhere, in the darkest corners of the underworld, a voice echoed. The debt is far from paid. The cycle is only beginning. The first rays of dawn barely pierced the thick fog that clung to the village of Phuc when Lan and Bao Kuang set out on their quest. Armed with nothing but a tattered map and fading fragments of old manuscripts, they felt the weight of generations pressing down on their shoulders. Each statue is a piece of the curse, Bao Kuang whispered as they walked through the mist-shrouded bamboo groves. Without them, the wrath grows stronger. But with each one we recover, we bind a little more of that anger. Lan nodded, clutching the charred coin she had found on her bedside. It was their talisman, a sinister reminder of the cost already paid. Their first lead took them to Haiphong, a bustling port city hours away. According to Bao Kuang's sources, one of the stolen statues, a miniature Vice Ravana, once part of the temple's 4 heavenly kings, had surfaced in a private collector's secret vault. The journey was treacherous. In the crowded streets, they sensed eyes watching, shadows slipping just out of sight. The criminal underworld had caught wind of their mission and they weren't keen on losing their precious loot. One night, as they navigated a maze of alleys, a shadow detached itself from the darkness, a figure cloaked in a worn black robe. "I know what you seek," the stranger hissed, voice cold as ice. "But beware, the statues do not wish to be found. And those who pursue them risk losing more than their lives." Lan tensed, her hand instinctively reaching for a concealed knife. Bao Kuang stepped forward, eyes narrowing. "Who are you?" he demanded. The stranger's eyes gleamed. "A keeper of secrets. Once a guardian of the pagoda's forgotten truths. I offer you a warning, the god's vengeance is swift and merciless." Before they could respond, the figure vanished, leaving behind a faint scent of sandalwood and smoke. Undeterred, Lan and Bao Kuang pressed on. Their investigations led them to a derelict temple on the outskirts of the city, where the collector's vault was rumored to be hidden beneath collapsed stones. Inside the ruin, they encountered ancient glyphs, pulsating with an eerie blue light. Lan traced her fingers along the carvings, feeling a tingle run up her arm. Suddenly, the ground trembled. The air grew thick, and the glyphs blazed brighter. A spectral figure emerged, a heavenly king, bound in chains of light, eyes blazing with fury. "Who dares disturb my prison?" it thundered, voice shaking the very walls. Bao Kuang and Lan froze, fear rooting them in place. Lan mustered her courage. "We seek to return what was stolen. To end the curse." The figure's gaze pierced her soul. "Then prove your worth. Face the trial of the flame." The trial was merciless. Lan found herself in a searing realm of fire and shadow. Illusions of her deepest fears swirled around her, the faces of her ancestors accusing her, her village burning to ashes, the statue's eyes glowing with judgment. But amid the inferno, Lan found strength in the memory of her family and the village she loved. She whispered prayers, steadying her trembling heart. The flames receded. The spectral king bowed. "You have passed. The statue awaits." Back in the vault, a hidden door slid open, revealing the miniature Vice Ravana, gleaming with a light untouched by time. Lan carefully lifted the statue, feeling its ancient power surge through her. But their victory was short-lived. As they exited, the collector's mercenaries, alerted by a mysterious informant, ambushed them. A furious battle erupted in the shadows. Lan and Bao Kuang fought desperately, narrowly escaping with the statue but suffering injuries. The informant was later revealed to be a trusted monk from Phuc, corrupted by greed and fear, secretly aiding those who sought to exploit the temple's relics. Back in Phuc, Master Vien Bao felt the curse deepen. He prepared for the inevitable reckoning. The moon hung low, casting a silver glow over the ancient pagoda of Phuc. The villagers were deep in slumber, unaware of the storm gathering within their sanctuary. Inside the temple, Lan and Bao Kuang returned from their harrowing escape, clutching the precious miniature statue of Vice Ravana. Both were battered, bruised from the fight with mercenaries, their breaths shallow but their spirits undeterred. Yet the true battle awaited them within the walls they once thought sacred. As they entered the main hall, a shadow flickered near the altar. A figure in monk's robes stepped forward. It was Brother Tian, a trusted disciple of Master Vien Bao, revered by the villagers for his devotion and humility. Ian's heart sank. Something about his eyes was off. "Brother Tian," Bao Kuang greeted cautiously. "We've returned with the statue." Tian smiled thinly. "Indeed, I heard of your success." "Such courage." But behind his smile lurked secrets deeper than the temple's roots. That night, while Lan rested in the guest chamber, she heard whispers, soft, urgent voices murmuring through the temple corridors. Drawn by unease, she silently followed the sounds. Near the sealed chamber behind the altar, the very one she had discovered months ago, she spotted Tian speaking in hushed tones with a hooded stranger. "The artifacts. They are powerful," Tian said, voice low. "With them, we can reshape the village's fate." The stranger nodded, revealing a tattoo of a serpent curling around a dagger, the mark of the Black Lotus Syndicate, a notorious underground criminal network. Ian's blood ran cold. Tien had betrayed the temple. At dawn, Lan confronted Master Vien Bao. "I saw Brother Tien last night. He's working with criminals," she confessed, voice trembling. The old monk closed his eyes, sorrow etched into his face. "Greed blinds even the purest hearts," he murmured. "We must act swiftly before the darkness spreads." Meanwhile, Tien prepared for the next phase. He and the syndicate planned to sell the remaining stolen statues to the highest bidders, powerful warlords and corrupt officials hungry for divine talismans. But with each deal, the curse grew stronger. Back in the village, strange omens multiplied. Children whispered about a shadowy figure watching from the pagoda's rooftop. Animals fled the forest in panic. Even the once gentle pagoda bell emitted a discordant clang, like a cry for help. Lan and Bao Kuang, realizing the depth of corruption, gathered allies, a few remaining monks, village elders, and even some repentant syndicate members. Together, they devised a plan to expose Tien, retrieve the statues before the curse consumed them all, and perform a sacred ritual to cleanse the temple. The night of the operation arrived. Under the cloak of darkness, the group infiltrated the syndicate's hideout, a decrepit warehouse on the outskirts of the city. Inside, statues glowed faintly under black lights, ominous and unnatural. Guards roamed the shadows, their eyes gleaming with suspicion. A fierce battle erupted. Lan fought with agility and determination, her heart pounding like a war drum. Bao Kuang wielded ancient chants, invoking blessings that shielded them from harm. The monks chanted prayers, their voices rising in a crescendo of hope. In the chaos, Lan found Tien, standing before a pedestal where the largest statue, the temple's sacred bell, awaited shipment. "You betray everything you swore to protect," she shouted. Tien's eyes gleamed with fanatic madness. "The gods have abandoned us. I seek power where they failed," he hissed. He raised a ceremonial dagger, chanting dark incantations. Lan lunged, grabbing a sacred relic, a pendant blessed by Master Vien Bao. The pendant glowed fiercely, emitting a radiant light that pushed back the shadows. Tien screamed, his form dissolving into smoke. The curse began to wane. The statues were recovered, though many bore signs of dark magic. Back in Phuc, Master Vien Bao led the purification ritual. The villagers gathered, lighting lanterns and chanting. The curse was lifted, but scars remained. Lan stood by the lotus pond, staring at the peaceful reflection. She whispered, "This is only the beginning." Because beneath the tranquil surface, the cycle of karma awaited its next player. The temple had regained its outward peace, but within the hearts of those who had fought to restore it, turmoil still churned. Lan sat beneath the great Bodhi tree, its leaves whispering ancient secrets as dusk painted the sky crimson. The weight of recent battles pressed heavily upon her chest. Bao Kuang approached, carrying a bundle of aged parchment tied with crimson thread. "I found something," he said softly. hidden deep in the temple archives, scrolls older than any living monk remembers. Lan untied the bundle carefully. The scrolls were brittle, the ink faded but still legible. They told the story of a celestial pact forged centuries ago, a pact binding the temple's sacred relics to the balance between mortal and divine realms. The statues, Bao Kuang continued, are not just guardians. They are vessels of cosmic power. But if removed, they awaken an ancient wrath. Ian's fingers trembled as she traced the faded characters. One passage stood out. When greed corrupts the faithful, the cycle of karma breaks, and the veil between worlds thins. The temple shall bleed, and the innocent shall suffer. Suddenly, a chill swept the courtyard. Lan looked up. The shadows lengthened unnaturally. That night, the visions returned more vivid, more terrifying. Lan dreamed of a figure cloaked in flame, its face a swirling mass of smoke and fire. It spoke without words, yet its message burned clear. The debt is never paid by one alone. The curse spreads like wildfire through those who seek to possess what is not theirs. Awaking in a cold sweat, Lan found a new talisman on her pillow, a twisted bronze fragment shaped like a serpent devouring its tail. The Ouroboros, the eternal symbol of cycles and rebirth. Days later, strange disappearances began in Phuc. Villagers who had spoken out or helped in the recovery of statues vanished without a trace. Whispers of a shadow cult grew louder, a sect devoted to harnessing the temple's power for their own dark ambitions. Lan and Bao Kuang knew they had to act. They sought the counsel of Master Vien Bao, who revealed a hidden chamber beneath the temple, a labyrinth of catacombs where the original guardians rested. To lift the curse permanently, they must retrieve the lost bell of the first dawn, a relic said to hold the power to seal the breach between worlds. Their descent into the catacombs was fraught with peril. Ancient traps, illusions, and echoes of past sins tested their resolve. Lan faced visions of her own fears, betrayal by those she trusted, the collapse of her village, and the endless cycle of despair. But with Bao Kuang's steady presence and Master Vien Bao's chance, they pressed forward. At the heart of the labyrinth, they found a lost bell, shattered, yet radiating a haunting glow. As Lan reached out, the chamber trembled. From the shadows emerged figures cloaked in black, the shadow cult. A fierce battle erupted, the clash of steel and chants shaking the ancient stone. Lan wielded the bronze serpent talisman, channeling its power to repel the darkness. With a final, desperate strike, she restored the bell's pieces, their light surging forth to banish the cultists. Emerging from the catacombs, the first light of dawn greeted them. The temple's bell tolled clear and true. The curse lifted, but its echoes remained, a reminder that balance was fragile, and vigilance eternal. The temple had never been quieter. The gentle ringing of the bell now filled the air with peace, but beneath that calm surface, a storm was brewing. Lan sat in the monastery's quiet room, poring over the ancient scrolls Bao Kuang had found. As she read, the ink seemed to shimmer, revealing hidden passages not visible before. Suddenly, her breath caught. The curse was born not of theft alone, but of betrayal by blood. The guardian's bloodline was severed, and with it, the seal weakened. Her heart pounded. She looked up at Bao Kuang. "We need to find the guardian's lineage," she whispered. Meanwhile, tensions within the group simmered. Bao Kuang grew suspicious of Master Vien Bao's intentions. Was the old monk hiding something? His reluctance to reveal the full history of the temple gnawed at Bao Kuang's trust. Lan noticed Bao Kuang's increasing coldness and confronted him. "We must work together," she urged. But Bao Kuang shook his head. "Sometimes, the truth is dangerous, Lan. Some secrets are better left buried." As these tensions played out, a mysterious figure appeared in the village, a scholar named Dr. Ha, an expert in ancient Vietnamese folklore and forbidden rituals. Dr. Ha requested to study the temple and offered his help to lift the curse. Lan was wary but desperate. She invited him into the fold. Dr. Ha's research unveiled a chilling revelation. The temple's curse was tied to a blood oath, sealed centuries ago by the original temple guardian, a warrior monk named Tien Vuong. When Tien Vuong was betrayed by his closest disciple and ancestor of Brother Tien, the curse was cast. Only a descendant of Tien Vuong could restore balance. Ian's world shattered. Could she be related to this guardian bloodline? Her grandmother's tale suddenly took on new meaning. Meanwhile, Brother Tien's betrayal was no isolated event, it was part of a centuries-old conspiracy to control the temple's power. Late one night, Lan woke to a cold breeze and a faint whisper calling her name. She followed the sound to the lotus pond, where the water shimmered unnaturally. A ghostly figure rose from the depths, a woman in ancient robes, eyes glowing. "The blood calls. The blood must be shed." Ian's knees buckled. The next day, Lan shared the vision with Bao Kuang and Master Vien Bao. Master Vien Bao confessed his secret knowledge. He revealed a hidden chamber beneath the lotus pond, sealed by magic, holding relics of the guardian, including a blood-stained sword and a seal ring. Only by claiming these could the curse be lifted. But danger lurked. The shadow cult had learned of the chamber and was closing in. Lan, Bao Kuang, Dr. Ha, and Master Vien Bao prepared for a final confrontation, one that would decide the fate of Phuc and its sacred legacy. The moon vanished behind a wall of storm clouds as Lan, Bao Kuang, Dr. Ha, and Master Vien Bao descended the spiral stairs into the hidden chamber beneath the lotus pond. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and ancient magic. The walls shimmered with faded glyphs that seemed to pulse with life. At the chamber's center lay the blood-stained sword and the seal ring, resting atop a stone altar bathed in eerie blue light. Lan reached out, her fingers trembling, and grasped the sword. A jolt shot through her veins, visions of centuries past flooded her mind, the original guardian Tien Vuong, his fierce battle, his ultimate betrayal. The sword burned hot, but not with fire, with sorrow and justice. The seal ring gleamed, heavy with responsibility. Suddenly, the chamber trembled. Shadows coalesced into the form of Brother Tien's ancestor, a dark spirit bound by hatred and vengeance. The air grew cold as the spirit's voice echoed. You dare challenge the curse. You will join the fallen, trapped forever between worlds. The group steeled themselves. Dr. Ha began chanting ancient incantations, his voice resonating with power. Master Veen Bao lit sacred incense, weaving protective wards. Bao Quang held Ian's hand steady. Lan raised the sword, calling upon the guardian's spirit. A fierce battle erupted, light against darkness, spirit against shadow. Ian's soul wavered between despair and hope as visions of her lineage and village flashed before her. With a final surge, she plunged the sword into the ground, the seal ring glowing and sealing the curse. A blinding light engulfed the chamber. When it faded, the dark spirit was gone. The temple bell tolled pure, clear, and eternal. Outside, the villagers awoke to a new dawn. The curse was lifted. Lan stood at the temple steps, the sword and ring by her side, knowing the fight had forged her into the true guardian of Phuc. Title: The Curse of Phuc Temple, a dark tale of theft, betrayal, and redemption, 12-chapter horror story. Description: Dive into the haunting saga of Phuc village and its ancient temple, where sacred statues guard not only faith but a deadly curse. Follow Qian's tragic fall, the betrayal within the temple walls, and the rise of a new guardian, Lan, as they confront shadowy cults, divine wrath, and dark family secrets. This 12-chapter horror fantasy story weaves mystery, supernatural terror, and the unbreakable cycle of karma into a chilling narrative of redemption and sacrifice. Experience a richly detailed journey of suspense, ancient lore, and spiritual battles that blur the lines between the mortal world and the divine. Will Lan succeed in breaking the curse and restoring balance? Or will darkness consume Phuc forever? Perfect for fans of supernatural thrillers, Vietnamese folklore, and epic horror tales. Subscribe and follow for more gripping stories.